For Telesur, I'm Cody Weddle in Caracas, Venezuela. We begin in the United States, where fallout in that country continues following a controversial grand jury ruling in Ferguson, Missouri. The jury cleared a white police officer in the shooting of an unarmed black teen that happened in August. Protests continue today following a turbulent night of intense demonstrations. Along with the marches in Ferguson, protests spilled out into major cities across the U.S. St. Louis prosecutor Bob McCullough announced that Officer Darren Wilson would not be indicted for fatally shooting 18-year-old Michael Brown. Today, Ferguson Mayor James Knowles said no decision had been made about Wilson's future in the police force. Wilson has been on administrative leave since the shooting. And protests also continue in Mexico almost 2 months after 43 teacher training students went missing at the hands of local police. For the latest on this story, we go once again to our correspondent there, Clayton Kahn.
With 1 day away from marking 2 months since the 43 Ayotzinapa students were disappeared by police in Guerrero, Mexico, the country's new director of the National Commission on Human Rights, Luis Raul Gonzalez Perez, has said the country should reflect on whether a truth commission should be initiated to investigate the case. Now, this comes after Senate President Miguel Barbosa has announced that this Thursday, Mexico's President Enrique Peña Nieto will officially announce the formation of a state commission to reevaluate the country's system of applying the rule of law and to develop proposals to confront the high levels of organized crime. Meanwhile, protests continue for the return alive of the 43 students, as well as the release of 11 people who were detained on nationwide protests held this past Thursday, November 20th. Those detained are facing charges of attempted murder, conspiracy, and rioting. Yet human rights defenders say they were arbitrarily detained and did not participate in any violent acts. This is Clayton Kahn reporting for Telesur here in Mexico City.
Colombia's rebels freed 2 captured soldiers Tuesday and say that a Colombian general detained by them could be freed this weekend. The 2 soldiers arrived in Bogota today after being released by the FARC into the custody of the Red Cross. The guerrilla group says that another detainee, General Rubén Darío Alzate, could be released this weekend. That's although the group demanded that Colombia's army halt operations in the area in order to avoid jeopardizing the separate release of a general. Darío Alzate's capture by FARC members in the conflict area of Chocó led Colombia's president to suspend peace talks with the rebels until the general was freed. The country of Ecuador is marking the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women by taking action to prevent and penalize violence against women. Our correspondent Liz Sherfias brings us more from Quito.
Under the motto, Learn, Speak, and Act, Ecuador has announced that it's undertaking a major campaign to prevent domestic violence and reduce instances of femicide nationwide. Cooperation agreements between 6 governmental ministries, the National Assembly, and the Emergency 911 Service were signed on Monday to further institutionalize the state's response to gender violence.
6 of every 10 women in Ecuador have suffered from psychological or physical abuse. 1 of every 4 women have been raped, have been part of these networks of sexual exploitation or human trafficking. These are the facts and the reason why state institutions this month came together to educate and raise awareness, to change these sociocultural ideas that have normalized this violence.
Efforts by the Ecuadorian state are part of a worldwide campaign developed by the UN Women Organization of 16 days of activism to raise awareness and end violence against women, beginning on November 24th and ending December 10th. Ecuador is working to educate the population about the gravity of the problem and what state services are available for victims and their families.
It is time to act, and the government is acting. Public institutions are acting. So in the Learn, Speak, and Act campaign, we're giving messages through the radio, television, billboards, buses, so that people become informed and look for help.
By providing preventive education for citizens and integrating the response of state institutions, Ecuador is working to ease access to the justice system for victims of domestic violence and definitively break the cycle of abuse. Liz Sherfias, Telesur, Ecuador.
Hundreds rallied in the Georgian capital of Tbilisi to protest against violence against women Tuesday. It's part of events around the globe observing the UN-recognized Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women. The date was chosen to commemorate the brutal killing of the Mirabal sisters, 3 Dominican women who fought against the U.S.-backed Trujillo dictatorship. According to the UN, 35% of women globally experience some form of physical and/or sexual violence in their lifetime. Ukraine continues to shell the region of Donetsk, with the civilian body count rising. At least 2 people were killed and another 8 injured when an artillery shell hit a passenger bus in a district of Donetsk Tuesday. Now, according to information released from the Interior Ministry of self-proclaimed Donetsk People's Republic, last weekend 2 gas pipelines were set on fire by the Ukrainian military, shelling in 2 districts of Ukraine's eastern city. And tensions also continue to rise in the West Bank, with more violence between Israelis and Palestinians reported on Tuesday. With the latest, here's our correspondent there, Noor Herzing.
After only a few days of calm in the West Bank, tension is rising again as the Israeli media reported that a 45-year-old Jewish man arrived at a police station in Jerusalem's Old City with stab wounds to his abdomen. Israel's Ynet news site reported that the man said he had been stabbed by Arabs. According to the report, the police were searching the area and took a Palestinian man in custody. The reported incident comes amid heavy tensions in Jerusalem, with tit-for-tat attacks increasing between Palestinians and Israelis following an attack on a synagogue last Tuesday that left 5 Israelis dead and several injured.
The tension with this kind of attack will never end until the occupation of Palestine ends. It has been over 66 years now, and enough is enough. If there is no justice for Palestinians, if their Israeli attacks continues, and if the building of settlements continues, then the youth of Palestine will not stop fighting back.
At the same time, Israeli settlers assaulted a young Palestinian man near the illegal Israeli settlement of French Hill. The victim, Mahmoud Obaid, 19-year-old, said that he was walking home from work when a car pulled over and one of the 5 Israelis in the car asked him for a lighter. Then the settler stepped out of the car and pushed him before the other 4 stepped out and attacked him with knives and rods. In another incident, a Palestinian teenager was injured after an Israeli man ran into him with his car and fled the scene. Khalil was standing in the Romania neighborhood in West Jerusalem when an Israeli vehicle approached him and deliberately ran over his foot. Noor Herzing, Int'l TV, Palestine.
And thanks to Noor. To end today, the host of the 2022 World Cup, Qatar, has unveiled new designs for the Khalifa Soccer Stadium in Doha. The stadium was originally built in 1976 and upgraded for the 2006 Asian Games. However, further renovations were necessary in order to meet the new FIFA regulations. The stadium will host important matches during the World Cup, and it will incorporate cooling technology to maintain a constant temperature of 26 degrees Celsius. Temperatures in the Arab country have been a concern for players and spectators, with the average summer temperature there hitting the high of 30s. We have plenty more on those stories and others at our website, telesurtv.net/English. For Telesur English, I'm Cody Weddle. We'll see you right back here tomorrow.